Well, welcome everybody. I'm Angie Nuttle, Executive Coach for Working Women, and you are on the A list. We have a guest who is coming on the show today. Before we go there, however, I do want to give you a few tidbits to be thinking about. First of all, if you didn't receive a notification for the A list, then you need to get on the A list. And the way that you can do that is go to www.angienuddle.com. You'll notice that when you get onto my website, a pop-up will appear and ask you if you want to join the A list. So I recommend that you do that. It's very simple to do that. You just put your name in and your email address, and every Monday you'll get a prompt notification exactly when it's time to come into the A list. Well, you may be asking, okay, what is it that you do in the A list? And the first thing that I do is I coach and encourage women. And I work with you to help you to understand your purpose, your calling, your mission, your destiny, and your gifts. That's really important. And so many women are caught up in this personal prison. You're caught up in wandering in the wilderness of work. And I find so many women are out to just simply waste their energy on always proving themselves, sacrificing, and then simply just surviving by the time it's all said and done. So I have a mission, and my mission is to help facilitate freedom. It's help women to get out of that situation so that you can live a life of meaning and significance. So there is a huge difference between success and significance, and many of us we've experienced that success, but it hasn't necessarily been fulfilling, and I help women to get to that place no matter where you're at. Another thing that I want to tell you about is just last week we did some info sessions about our women's coaching circle experiences. So if you weren't able to get in on the action there, just know that I have a replay available, and you can learn all about these experiences, these circles, and there are different kinds and they're at varying levels. So if you're a person that you're looking for professional support, professional development, or personal development, you can go in and get in on these circles. And the way that you can access that replay to find out more information about it is to go to angienuddle.com/circles. That's all lowercase, all lowercase. All right, today we do have a guest who will be joining me shortly. Her name is Julie Kratz, and she is the founder of Pivot Point. I can't wait for you to meet her. Hopefully she'll join us here soon. But, I want to talk about the A-list because we've been doing this every Monday for the last few months. And the great thing about this is that women show up I notice that women tend to show up when they're hurting, when they have things going on in their life and they need a bit of encouragement. So I'm so glad that this is an oasis for you. And I want you to be encouraged not just by me and what I'm trying to impart to you, but that's why I'm bringing other women onto the show, other women who were in positions just like you. And they may have been wandering around in that wilderness of work, and they struggled. But I want you to meet other women who have moved on from living the successful life to living a significant life. And a couple weeks ago, we had Amy Kendrick come on. She was a fantastic guest. Founder of What Friends Do. If you missed that, you can go onto my website and go to my blog, and you can see the Facebook Live replay to learn more about her and what she does to help families who are in need, families who have suffered a catastrophic loss, or you have a major milestone occurring where maybe someone is terminally ill, or maybe someone has had a major accident, and What Friends Do comes in and helps take care of all of that running that needs to be done. It's a really creative idea that Amy came up with, and she, as a result of that, she ended up turning that into a business, and it's a successful business. All right. So while Julie is coming on, I want to give you a little bit of background. There she is. Hey, lady, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. It's great to see your beautiful smile on this Monday morning.
Ditto.
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce you. I was just scoping out your website, looking at it, And what I wanted everybody to know is that Julie and I met a while back. We were at a women's conference, and I met her, and I was just really impressed with her, and just felt a connection with her. And we've talked now that she does a lot of things that I do too, and so I feel like we're partners in
Mhm.
crime in well, not really crime, but
Depending on who you
partners.
ask.
Yeah, partners in the trenches to rescue women and get them on the road to freedom.
Yeah.
So Julie is she's an author, she's a speaker. Every time I turn around, Julie, you're speaking somewhere, which is incredible. And you also, so you're a coach as well and a consultant. So you've got your own consulting and coaching firm, the Pivot Point, and you have, I'm not going to spoil too much about what your story is and background. I want you to be able to tell that. But what I love about you is that not only do you help women, especially women who are, they're going through a career transition and you want to help them with their career game plan, but you spent some time in corporate. You've been there, done that, and what you've really found this specialty, this niche around gender equality and
Mhm.
male allies. So I'm really interested to hear uh, what that's all about, and I know that it's going to encourage the ladies who get a hold of this. And this Facebook Live, this goes out to, we're doing it live right now on my page, but this goes out to thousands of people all over the United States. It will go out this week. So no
Oh,
pressure or
good.
anything.
Well, Angie, I just want to thank you so much for having me on. I know we've been talking over the last, gosh, I think couple of years since we first met, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, women helping each other, and we could easily look at each other
Yeah,
as perhaps competition. I really don't look at people in the women's leadership space that way.
right.
We got to be allies for each other. We have to support one another. So I appreciate you inviting me on, and helping share that message, because so much of what you
Yeah,
do in supporting women that, I call them pivot points, but there's reflection
right.
points throughout our careers, personally and professionally, where we really need the support of one another to lift each other up. So I know I'm continuously going through that myself, and my business pivot point even has pivot points. So, and what you're highlighting with our work on male allies, that really is our latest pivot point.
Yeah,
After, spending the last almost 4 years in rooms of women talking to women about quote unquote women's challenges, it was frustrating. Why
yeah,
aren't men a part of this? Why aren't men in the room? What happens when we go back from this conference and men are like, oh gosh, what was she talking about? Oh boy, was it man bashing? There's all sorts of stuff I've heard from men. And I think there's just fear, right? And especially post Me Too, we're living in very much a fear-laden work environment where we're just like, hush, hush, don't talk about this stuff, right? That seems to be
right.
the safer message, but it's not.
Yeah,
That's a short-term shortcut.
yeah,
The companies that get it, that are really not only investing in their women from a professional development standpoint, but also recognizing that our allies are often men in decision-making roles. We still live in a
yeah,
world where 95% of CEOs are men, 80% of most boards and leadership teams are men, and that's okay. They're not the enemy, but I think they could really be a friend and an ally to us if we engage them as women. And,
yeah,
that's what our latest work is about, providing tools to engage men in the conversation. So it doesn't have to be scary. It might be uncomfortable,
yeah.
but it doesn't have to be something that's delicate and fearful.
Right. You're making such an incredible point because this past weekend, I was telling the audience that we were doing our School of Executive Presence Mastermind, and we put them through a business simulation, and um, most of the most of the participants, well, the males were more dominant than the women in the group, and when they were going through the business simulation, it was very clear that the men in the group, they were used to taking those power positions,
Hmm.
and we just observed the women. It's almost like we've been socialized to just sit back and be polite and
Hmm.
and speak when we're spoken to, and it was very profound. I was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
this needs to change, right? I mean, women have just as much value and deserve to be
Hmm.
in that room. So I'm really interested to hear more about this work. And before we go there, just take a moment to, tell tell everybody who you are and how did you get started with your own coaching and consulting firm? I mean, you came from a corporate environment. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, I affectionately call my business pivot point because I did have a lot of pivot points in my corporate career. So I spent about 12 years in corporate America. I like to think of them as activities where I checked the boxes, did the things you're
Yeah.
supposed to do on your individual development plans, your IDP, got to be high potential and had lots of opportunities to manage teams. I managed people most of my career from a very early age, and it was awesome. That's the part that I love the most, kind of threaded
Yeah.
throughout my corporate experience and even getting my MBA was about really empowering others to be the best version of themselves. So seeing that change was
Yeah.
possible, that people could be an even better employee, leader, whatever it was that they were working on. And so that was something that was really important to me. And I think it took a little bit of introspection and reflection actually at a women's conference where I was thinking about, what is
Mm.
my purpose? What is my calling? It certainly wasn't the work I was doing then. I was selling consulting services at the time. And it was okay, but it definitely didn't get me
Right.
excited on Monday morning, and so now I get to think about my life's work. I mean, really, it is the work I'm meant to do is to help women
Yeah.
discover what their pivot point might be and successfully transition through that, through coaching, through training, through speaking. So
Yeah.
we've really been doing a lot of speaking, especially around male allies recently. Getting men involved in the conversation, I think, is the next iteration of this work. And I'm excited to see where it goes next. I'm 9 months into this wild ride, and I've given the
Yeah.
presentation like 40 times now. So I'm always like, what's next? What's next? And I'm like, oh, just wait. Like this message needs to
Right.
kind of bake and marinate a little bit, like let people feel us out. But I'm
Yeah.
constantly thinking of new ideas too.
Yeah. Oh, we're so alike in that way. I mean, I can have like 50 different things floating out of my head. Oh, we could do this, and here's how we could change the world. And
I know. Like, stop. Like, let this one go
right.
first. So it's funny too,
Well,
because,
I
okay.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say we're both in Indiana, right? So it's interesting when I travel. I was on the West Coast last week, and it's interesting that I kind of take for granted that people here in Central Indiana kind of know my message. And yeah, I travel outside and go to San Francisco, New York, and stuff. But last week, as I'm speaking to a group, it was like a whole new thing for them, and they're like,
Yeah.
"This is very cool. Like, you're
Yeah.
making me think in a way that I haven't been exposed to this kind of thinking before." And it was a group of men in athletics,
Yeah.
very male dominated. And so it's a reminder of this work needs to continue. I need to continue
Yeah.
to engage in new ways with audiences, but the message itself is still kind of on the forefront, which I think for people like us that innovate, we're always thinking there's more, but maybe got to
Yeah.
wait a little bit for others to kind of get into the conversation more.
Right. Well, I loved what you said just a few moments ago. You said, "Oh, you're 9 months in," and I immediately thought, "Well, it's like giving birth, isn't it? You're you're waiting impatiently for it to come along and just pop out, and everything will be great." But so you also mentioned about the hashtag Me Too, and so talk a little bit about that. How did when Me Too came about? How did you react to this, and how did it become a part of the discussion and what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Oh, sorry, my cat's in the background. Okay.
Well, hi, welcome.
He's like, I want to get out of here. Hey, no, me too. Yeah, me too. Well, first of all, something that you're hitting on with the Me Too movement. So ironically, someone brought this up to me, is that Me Too, so the Harvey Weinstein first posted October 5th of last year. So that's when it's kind of
Mhm.
broke. Me Too's been around for
Yeah.
decades, right? It just hasn't had a hashtag and it hasn't been paid attention
Right.
to in a way, which is a whole other story. But when it broke, as we see it now today, it was October 5th. Our book about male allies was published October 4th. So couldn't have been more
Oh,
timely. I'm having
right.
conversations with women and they're like, did you know this was going to happen? How did you know? I'm like, absolutely not. I knew we were on the
Yeah.
precipice of something politically and socially. There was a lot of interesting things happening that year before that I think now we
Hmm.
look back and easily see how this could have happened. But
Yeah.
Me Too, it's interesting. There's two sides to every coin. For one, I am certainly excited about women having a platform to share their stories, and that promotes some
Yeah.
sort of healing, that they can really release that and kind of purge that in a safe format, and that they understand too they're not alone. I mean, a lot of us that go through something
Yeah.
like this think that we're alone, that it's just us. Edward, stop.
Yeah.
So, and then on the other side of it, what the research is showing, and companies like Lean In, it has shown the research is that men are retreating from the conversation, that there's a little bit
Ah,
of fear, right? And that
yeah.
men don't want to be one-on-one with women in settings where it might be perceived as there's something else going on, which to me, I'm like, why does a man and a woman meeting together signal anything more
Yeah.
than a professional relationship or a personal relationship? Doesn't have
Right.
to be this other context behind it. But we live in a world
Yeah.
where, things are sexualized that maybe shouldn't always
Yeah.
be. So that's kind of how our take on Me Too. I think it's definitely a platform for positive change. We just need to make sure that it's continuing to evolve in a positive way. Um,
Right.
and it's right now, I think we're at a very interesting crossroads where that could very much be possible.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
You gonna go get your cat?
I locked him in
Don't
accidentally.
feel bad. I mean, this is
He's a male
probably most
ally.
women. Yeah.
Gets fired up.
Well, I have two Japanese dogs that are right outside the door, a male and a female. So maybe they'll gain some insight from all of
True
this.
allies.
That's right. Yeah, and I appreciate what you said about the Me Too, and there is this balance. You know, there's two sides to the coin. I was actually interviewed for when that whole thing came out. I was interviewed for that because early in my career, I did,
Mhm.
I did experience some extreme harassment, and it actually went to court, and so
Oh
it was
my
a really
gosh.
difficult circumstance. And I'm glad that today that there has been some movement towards, uh, you know, especially men recognizing that they need to we need to talk about these things, and we need
Mhm.
to we need to shed
Mhm.
light on it. But and I can see where men might retreat because it's they're like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to put myself in a position where it could be perceived this way, and so there is
Mhm.
this huge fear. So, when you're talking to men in organizations, and male leaders, well, and any male for that matter, what are some of the tips that you give them, or what's some of the advice that you give them to help promote that positive and healthy relationship?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can add her back. It may be that her cat cut her off and said, "I need your attention." There you are.
I don't know what happened. It just went away.
It's probably your cat.
Yeah.
He was jealous.
Oh, I wouldn't surprise me. So you were asking about tips, for men to be more of allies, and
Yeah,
it really is. We did a lot of research around this. So I interviewed men and women around the country about what it means to be an ally. And actually, I didn't even know what the term was to describe men in
yeah,
listening in conversation. We landed at the term allies due to some polling and interviewing that we did that seemed to be the overwhelming kind of appropriate title as an ally. And just to kind of
hmm
distinguish what an ally does and what strategies you can take as an ally can really serve a lot of different roles, for a woman, or,
hmm
or for a man, really. Um, and it really is built on what that person can benefit from. So if it is a man being an ally to a woman, it's really important that our allies ask questions and listen and know what role that is best going to serve that woman. And
yeah,
so, I think about ally as kind of an umbrella term. Underneath that, different spokes kind of appear, where it could be a mentor, it could be a sponsor, it could be an advocate, it could be somebody that's a peer, it could be a direct report
yeah.
even, or it could be someone you report to. So there's really no power structure to it. It's somebody, think side
hmm
by side, somebody that's in it with you, that supports you in the way that you want to be supported. And within that, to be an even better ally, if you do have allies already informally or maybe even formally, I often signal for men to be even more of an ally is first and foremost practice empathy. Empathy is one
Yeah,
of the best tools as an ally. So empathy is very different than sympathy, meaning don't pretend like you know what it's like to be her. Ask her, be
right.
curious. You don't have to be the white knight to like save the day and rescue this woman. You know, it's not a fairy tale. This is real life. We can solve real problems, right?
Right.
And so empathize and come at it from a place of curiosity. The other piece to it is the number one attribute associated with an ally that we found that really resonates is listening. And that means
Mm-hmm.
listening to her story, you know, asking good, open-ended questions, you know, like a good coach does, and sits back and provides
Mm-hmm.
that space for her to process and articulate her story.
Yeah.
To your point about what happened over the weekend, women are reluctant to speak up in groups.
Yeah.
They're reluctant to claim their career. We focus on the job at hand and hope that people will just recognize our great work and
Right.
promote us or know that we went on this project miraculously through, you know, some sort of telepathic.
Telepathy. Yeah.
Right. Like, well, how did they not know I wanted to do that? Well, so when did you communicate that you wanted to do that?
That
Oh,
right.
well, surely they would have known. Women, we do this all the time, and I myself did it in my career. I am no, I have not mastered this myself, but I do think that women, you know, we don't often have a seat at the table. Our allies often do, just by sheer power and position.
Yeah.
So how can we get a bug in their ear so they know our story? So when they're sitting around the table deciding project or promotions, that they can say, "Hey, I talked to Sally last week and she's really interested in this." Hmm, wow, what a great sponsor that can advocate for you
Yeah.
when you're not there. And so think about
Yeah.
that, allies. If you're in a position to share her story and speak up on her behalf when she can't be in the room, do it. And
Yeah.
if she is in the room and you know, there's things that tend to happen to women much more often than men, like being interrupted, or ideas being taken credit for,
Mm-hmm.
mansplaining over and under
Yeah.
explaining things. And men are like,
Right.
that's a thing. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So women are usually, yes, it's a thing. So if you see that
Yeah.
kind of behavior in a meeting or in a setting, you know, professionally or personally, just feel free to interject and say, hey, she was still talking. Let's go back to her. Or, you know, she shared that idea 5 minutes ago. Let's let her wrap that up. Right. And so it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
this awkward conversation. It can just be a simple call out, and our allies are often better suited to do that. And then the fourth piece that we
Yes.
found was around work and life integration. So men, I think, stand to benefit just as much as women from all of this, but most importantly, this pillar around fatherhood and motherhood and how we
Yeah.
view that in the workplace. You know, we just don't ask the same questions of working fathers as we do of working mothers. And I
Right.
truly believe until we cross that hurdle and allow men, you know, to spend time with their children and value them
Yeah.
equally as we do for mothers, that we're going to experience challenges with women mid-career that have small children. They just simply don't have enough time to do both effectively, and they're constantly torn
Right.
back and forth. And men can do just as much to help. There's very few things
I
they can't
agree.
do. Like there's one thing you can't do with a newborn that a woman can do. That is about it. And there's workarounds for that.
Right.
Why do we think like a man like shouldn't be
That's
take
so
time off with
good.
a newborn? Like what is he? What he can do everything. He can do so many things that a woman
Right.
can do.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I have a husband who is a fantastic father, and he definitely, I mean, he was used to me in my corporate career. I mean, I used to be on travel 70% of the time, and so he created a tight bond with my daughter, but I completely understand just on a general level that women are guilty of just
Mm.
making assumptions that everyone can read their minds.
Yeah.
And and I think all of us are guilty of this. I mean, I can think of times where when I thought, well, gosh, he should know that this is my favorite birthday cake flavor, and he has no clue. Or, I'm wishing that he would, clean up something. Or, yeah, I mean, and it's just, they don't know that. I mean, people really have to be told. But,
Mm-hmm.
revisiting the other pieces that you were talking about, being curious and just even over communicating is
Yeah.
a critical piece of this, and it's incumbent upon both parties to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like,
Absolutely.
I think as you were talking about being curious, I was thinking, just a very simple question that men can say, well, what's really important to you?
Yeah.
I mean, just that general foundational coaching question will start to open up a conversation.
Just
So,
you spinning
I
that
mean,
made me feel so validated. Just it's just role playing that out. I was like, ooh, that's a good one. I want to think about
yeah,
that. Yeah, and give her the space to
yeah,
think it through. As men, sometimes we'll interject with, okay, this is what I think. And it's like, no, you guys just asked a really good question. Let it hang for a little bit. It might take some processing time for
yeah,
us to jump in. And you
yeah,
might need to reframe it a little bit, but usually a powerful question like that, it goes so far. The one I
Yeah.
love to build off of that, Angie, is what is it like to be a woman right now?
Ah,
If you can ask
that's a
someone you
good,
work with that you trust or personally, man, you will learn more in 10 minutes than you did in years.
yeah, that's true. Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm going to write that one down.
That men often share is like, oh, I could ask a woman that. And I think they're afraid like we're gonna cry or it's gonna be hours of conversation about us venting. It's usually 10 minutes and
Yeah.
again, you learn so much more than you would have working
Yeah.
alongside somebody.
Yeah. Awesome. So, so we've been talking, for those of you who have been joining, I've been talking to Julie Kratz, who is an author, speaker, coach, consultant, uh, purveyor, and promoter of gender equality. So, what advice would you give, Julie, to women who are in an environment where gender equality and male allies aren't really the prominent thing? You know, it's absent or there's very little of it. So, what would you advise to those women?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Angie. I wish everyone was ready for this conversation. I have been in rooms where it certainly is years from being ready for that. So I like to say with clients, I'll meet you where you're at. I have certain clients where they have just women's leadership, women's initiative. Sometimes it's called an employee resource group, an affinity group
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. So if you have one at your organization, it's just women talking to women. That's pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
Um, More and more, I'm starting to see them wanting to reach out and have the dialogue with men. And so they'll maybe have a few men. It's still primarily women in those rooms. To me, that's a signal there's an opportunity to
Yes.
ask them questions about why aren't men coming? What could we do to encourage you to want to come? What
Yeah.
kind of topics would you be interested in? There's two sides to that coin too, because then women feel like, well, this was our safe place for just women, and now we're inviting men, and they're just going to dominate this just like they do everything else. I often
Ooh,
find that not
yeah.
to be the case. Most of our
Right.
allies and kind of early adopters of this message will come in and listen. And especially if you tell them your job is to listen, your job is not to solve our problem. Your job is to be
Right.
curious, and your job is to participate in the dialogue, but it's still about women.
Yeah.
So I think if you can give them the right parameters, I think you'd be surprised. One of the best methods, if your organization's still, just women talking to women, or maybe not even have an affinity group yet, that's okay too.
Yeah.
I really love this concept that one of my clients, Cummins, actually in Southern Indiana, used called Invite an Ally Day. And so they had a
Mm.
women's group, traditionally just women talking to women, but they wanted men involved. And so they saw this as an opportunity to have me come in and help facilitate that because sometimes it's hard internally to do that.
Yeah.
And all the women invited their ally or allies to come with them. And that really opens up a safe place for men to be like, oh, they want me there. Like, oh, and a
Yeah.
lot of men will be like, I had no idea I was an ally to her. I was just, helping. Of course, I saw that in her, right? Of course,
Yeah.
I, helped get her promoted, or of course, I was mentoring or whatever. But I didn't know that I was having an impact. And this is really important as women. If you have allies out there, let them know the impact that they've had on you. Recognize them because I bet they're not
Mhm.
giving themselves credit for what they've done. And that recognition will fuel them to want to do it more for other women. So,
Yeah.
finding different ways to meet men where they're at, recognize them, invite them specifically, and give them clear instructions and feedback.
Right.
Men respond really well to direct feedback. As women, we're like, we kind of tiptoe around it and then we ruminate on it
Right.
and we get it. Like men, it's just kind of like, okay, cool, like moving on.
Right.
I'm being dramatic, but I often find women struggle with these conversations sometimes, whereas men are like, thanks for letting me know. Good to know. I can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, a lot of women that I know, they have a strong value around harmony.
Hmm.
And so for some women, harmony means that they should just avoid conflict.
Yep.
And they're afraid to walk in that, when harmony is really about walking through a situation together and getting to the other side,
Yeah.
so that so that you can have that alignment. So
Hmm.
do you find that when you're talking with women and you're giving them tips or helping them to try to create this kind of environment, that
Hmm.
they kind of shy back and say, oh, I I'm not sure I can do that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's interesting. So we're kicking off our podcast season 2. So it's Pivot Point is the podcast. If you're interested, season 2 we're going to launch this fall, and it's called Candid Conversation. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Ah,
I reached out to a lot of
good.
women about tell me about a time when you've had a candid conversation, like the things we're talking about. You got interrupted, you saw something not so good happen, you had to intervene, whatever it is. And women were like
Yeah,
quick to sign up. Now I wanted it to
yeah.
be gender balance because that's what I stand for, gender equality. So I wanted half women, half men. And so it took me 2 weeks longer to get men to talk about this.
Ah,
So I actually find and they're okay sharing these stories publicly, where I do think women can be a little conflict avoidant. I think you're right because we want to
yeah,
keep the peace, and we're programmed from a very young age to please others and think about the impact of our personality on others, whereas men are programmed the opposite. So this
right.
does show up, but I still think men are really tiptoeing around this, like, yikes. And
Yeah,
then men will say things like, oh, I don't have a story like that. And I'm just like, bull,
yeah.
you know, yes, you do. Don't lie to me, right? Like you do.
Yeah,
Has this happened? Has this happened? Oh, well, I guess that is a thing. I'm like, come on, like get
right.
involved here. So yeah,
Yeah.
I find mixed feedback on this.
Okay.
Men, I want more men to feel comfortable about this message. I think again, there's so much fear, that not having this conversation is easier than having it, which I completely
Yeah,
disagree with.
yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things, and I want to make sure that our audience knows how to get in touch with you. One of the things, just backing up, that you actually come into organizations and facilitate these kinds of conversations. So
Mhm.
I want to know. I want you to share with everyone how they can get in touch with you to do that, and if there's anything that they need to know about that. And then also the candid conversation. So you're starting the podcast.
Mhm.
Also, the second piece is how can they have access to your podcast?
Oh yeah. So it should come up really easily. iTunes, it's called Pivot Point. So if you just search Pivot Point, it's a little circle with
Mm-hmm.
Pivot Point in the middle. To my knowledge, it comes up first or second. So, and it's available on Android too. So wherever you get your podcast, just search Pivot Point, it should pop right up. Season 1 has 25 episodes, so there's lots of content out there. There are some very cool interviews to check out, and people in the diversity space that have interesting messages around
Ah,
allies, and everyday leaders that tell their ally stories. So I love sharing ally stories. So if you want to be interviewed on season 2, I've still got a couple slots open as well. I'm interviewing
okay.
men and women together and separately about candid conversations you've had around equality. So,
Cool.
tell me a time when things went rogue and you did something, or maybe you didn't do something and you wish you would have done something, or here's what you did and here's how it went and what prevented you from
Yeah.
having that conversation. And then I'll ask, if you, just like you did today, a few probing, specific questions to the person as well. But
Right.
half an hour of your time, you can be featured on the podcast, or if you know of an amazing leader out there that has a story, love to talk to them. And then the other way to get
Awesome.
in touch, we post on social media every day. I'm very active, just as you are. I love your presence, Angie, out there. And we're
Well,
next.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. We're next Pivot Point on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then LinkedIn, by far, we have their best reach, because
Yeah.
a lot of the challenges we face are professional, and diversity is very big on LinkedIn right now. So Julie
Hmm.
Kratz, you can find me there. I love if you can follow me, or if you want to be involved in, we also do an email newsletter. So happy to get you on that. We send something twice a month, with some content to spark a conversation, to make this difficult conversation easier to manage.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to let everybody know that tell everybody what your exact website address is so that we can get it out there.
Same thing, nextpivotpoint.com. So we try to be consistent.
Next,
Yep.
yeah,
And actually,
nextpoint.com.
yep. And by far the most popular tool on there is, it'll pop right up when you log in there. But you can put your email address, to get on our newsletter, but you'll get access to all the interviews behind one, and the 5 questions to get gender equality started in your organization, which by far
Ah,
has been the most popular. We have like several hundred hits a month just looking for that article.
Yeah.
And it's a discussion guide too. And they're powerful questions just to kind of get the ball rolling. This isn't a one and done conversation. It's just, this opens it up a little bit. And as a leader, I think
Yeah.
showing you care about this is something very compelling that your team will respond to. So I try to make it easier for you. There's a toolkit out there you can get access to, and make the conversation more comfortable.
Good. Good. Well, Rebecca is saying great stuff, ladies. Thanks. And it's so
Um,
true. I just want to say hi to Julie also, who has raised her hand.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Julie, for being on here. I think this is, I mean, what you're doing is powerful and incredible stuff, and I admire you greatly for what you're doing. And
Thank
I'm
you.
just so proud to call you my colleague and friend. Glad that you're on
Um,
here. So, any last words that you would share for any lady who's listening to this podcast? Any last words?
if you do not have an ally, get one. So the research shows that men are far more likely to have sponsors and mentors than women. I ask this question in
Yeah.
nearly every talk I do, and men continuously raise their hands far more than women do. So if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have a sponsor, meaning someone to speak up on your behalf when you're not there, you don't have a coach, you don't have somebody you can trust and be your authentic self with and get support from when you need it,
Yeah.
find one. Find one, and they will help you in ways. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It is a sign of strength.
Right.
I
Yeah.
know mentors and sponsors that I've engaged in my career this year has made a huge, huge difference for me.
Yeah.
Please, please take the time to invest in yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. I loved having you on here, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. And I'm hopefully people will be coming over your way and jumping onto your boat and your cause.
Thank you. Thanks so much for supporting me. It's so great to have an ally in you, and supporting your message.
You're
So I
welcome.
appreciate you.
I appreciate you so much. All right, everybody. So that's it for our Facebook Live today. And you've heard from Julie Kratz, and you've heard from me, Angie Nuttle. Hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Next week, we'll have an all new Facebook Live, Monday, 12 noon Eastern. We'll see you then. All right. Bye bye, everybody.
All right. Thanks.